Welcome. We're excited to have you. My name is Casey Evans. I am the Associate Dean for undergraduate programs at the Kogod School of Business, and we're thrilled to have you today. Our goal is for you to get a good idea of how we use AI in our curriculum, how we're using it at Kogod. We've got a lot of information to share with you, and we also have two wonderful people here with us. Rachel Lyons, who is an alum, and we've got a current student, Luke, who's going to be each of them sharing about their experience in Kogod. So, I'll go ahead and get started. And, we've got a couple introduction slides here and asking, are you AI ready? Because it's going to change everything. And, you all have seen in the last, specifically in the last year and a half, how much things have started to change in the space of healthcare. When you're going to your doctor, they may be using AI as well in terms of helping to diagnose you. There's a lot of AI used in research now that folks are really excited about. You've seen it in Hollywood with artist rights and how, there's a big conflict between the use of AI and the use of creativity and owning that creativity and in energy. We're looking at how AI is just, all this energy is draining our resources and concerns around that. And then I know all of you, us included, are concerned about what we're hearing around jobs. And you've got a LinkedIn article, or sorry, a New York Times article written by a LinkedIn executive, one that we've actually worked with, that's talking about how the career ladder is really going to change, particularly in that entry level space. And so you are even seeing it sometimes in areas you wouldn't expect. And so this is just a clip from some research that when pigs are getting sick, we've got AI kind of figuring that out too. If you're just looking at just so we can capture a sense of how quickly this is all moving, what you have here is other disruptive technologies and how long it took folks to adopt them. You've got Amazon. It took a while for Amazon to go from what it was to what it is now. Twitter, a faster adoption time period, but going from 5 years with 100 million users, and then 3 years later, 300 million. You see the adoption of the iPhone here, the quick adoption of Facebook, but then when you look down at the bottom, the rapid adoption of AI, and really just a matter of months from that first time use to what we see now. And you can even think about your own usage and how quickly that's changed. You probably went from last year using AI as an assistant to now using it much more as a collaborator. And there is just more to come in that space. And so what I wanted to do is take a minute to share with you, we have our journey and how we have gotten to where we are in terms of our use of AI in our curriculum. And we've really become a leader in this space in AI and higher education. It really started about 2 years ago when CEOs were coming to campus and saying, run, do not walk towards this technology. It will change everything. And we took that advice very seriously, and we really got to work. And the type of work that we did is we have infused AI into our courses, almost all of our courses, in a way that I'll explain shortly in more detail. But, our goal is to ensure that all of our students graduate with AI fluency regardless of their major. And, we've got it in our courses, in our programs, and throughout our school. You can see some statistics here where AI is taught in every department, degree, major, and minor at 100% rate. 100% of AI classes have AI learning objectives, and over 90% of our faculty are using AI in how they're teaching in the classroom. And what we're also seeing is that 90% of faculty, what we have done is, we recognize that AI can't be used in the same way everywhere. And so what we've done is created categories for AI use to help us track it, but then also help our students better understand when they're entering a class based on the category, how they can expect to use it. And so our three categories are Sage, Artisan, and Coach. You can see here the Sage courses are really, that's where, we go under the hood. Those are information technology classes, and students are really learning about AI from a very, very detailed level and using it, and again, like really going deep with it. Most of our classes we consider AI artisan, where there's moderate incorporation of AI. I'll give you some few examples in a minute so you can see what that looks like. And then about 22% is we call them our coach classes, where, where appropriate, there's some incorporation of AI, but this is all changing very rapidly. Our numbers, these numbers are probably already old, even though they're from the start of the semester. Our adoption is quite quick. And, really what this gets us to is what this quote you can see here from John Byrne, who is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Poets and Quants, which is a they do rankings for undergraduate business schools. And I'll share that our dean, Dave Marchek, and I recently presented at a conference to over 100, close to 200, I guess, other business school deans, to tell them about what we're doing in AI, try to learn from them about what they're doing. And, what we have learned in terms of how, when we've been talking with folks, is just like we've confirmed that this quote that you see here is still very accurate. We are much farther ahead than any other school in this space. And so, he's saying that we're the most consequential AI transformation that he's seen in business education. And we're proud of that. We've worked hard to get there. And so I want to show you a little bit of like what that means. We are considered by Bloomberg an AI first business school. And really where you see that is like we have an AI major, we have a minor, we have graduate business programs. And then for those who don't want to major or minor in it, we've got badges and certificates that are, say, marketing students, finance students, accounting students can take additional AI classes related to their coursework and earn a badge to show that they have a credential in AI. And, we've, so wanted to show you like, what does this really look like? What does an AI first curriculum really look like? And so we've got a few, I want to first show you, before I show you the sample courses, how we've been thoughtful and strategic in terms of how we've infused it. So all of you all, when you join us in the fall, you're taking 6 business courses. We have a new curriculum that's in its now, it will be the 3rd year by the time you get here. 6 business courses in your first year. You're not going to see that at other schools. You will jump right into business day one. And in those courses, all of our 100 level courses, we have really a theme of first teaching you how to properly use AI in college for your business courses, for your assignments, and do it responsibly. We are teaching our students to first be critical of what the models pop out and spit out, and not to just cut and paste and turn it in for your assignment, because we'll go through several exercises in my own class. I teach a 100 level class where I look at the response from AI from a prompt that's, say, the assignment, and grade it in front of my students, and they can see that that's kind of like a C minus, and what it takes to get them to that A, which is adding course, what we've talked about in the course, them applying it to their own experiences and things along those lines, but really helping them pick apart and understand where it works well and where it doesn't work so well and why. Then once they have a good foundation after year 1, they then start to get into year 2, which is where you're doing your intro to finance, accounting, marketing, management courses, and introducing how AI is used in those different verticals. And so you're using AI in a financial forecast in your finance class. You're using it to analyze financial statements in your accounting class, to build marketing materials in your marketing class. And then by the time you've gone through our undergraduate core, which are all of the business courses that our students have to take, you're very well positioned to pick your major. And then you dive into using AI in your more major specific discipline. You've got a great example coming from Luke in a few moments and how he's using it in his marketing major. But they know that the examples that you see from Luke, you'll get in all of our majors. And then you do a capstone at the end where we have AI infused into that capstone course, and it's coupled with a real life client that you work on a project for. And so just to chat with you a little bit about our classes and what they look like. We've got some examples here. I wanted to try to give you a variety. So I've got like a first year course, I have an entrepreneurship course, a management course, marketing, finance. In that first year course, that's the core 105. The instructor there doesn't even use a textbook or assigned readings. The students are basically given prompts and they curate their own readings and articles that are relevant to the course based on the prompts that they're given, which are tweaked around their own interests. In Management 483, that's an entrepreneurship course. They're using AI to help with really taking a design thinking approach to product development and creating pitches and pitching their ideas. Marketing 411, I believe that's the one Luke's going to talk with you about in a minute, but that's where they're creating apps for a client as part of a marketing campaign. And then in these two finance classes, in Finance 665, that's where they're using AI to analyze corporate earnings, conduct forecasting, really using it in real time. And then in the final one, that's a machine learning course where they're using AI to really, that's a SAGE course where they're using AI to really check, write, analyze code, and really understand how the models work. Um, from there, I also want to highlight that it's not that our students are just kind of running wild and using AI. We ask them to disclose how they're using it. And so all of our courses include requirements where our students complete and return this form for all their assignments. And so that helps us give it a better understanding of how students are using AI. And this gives us something to talk with them with as we are learning more about, are they using it for brainstorming? Did they just use it for research? Are they using it for final editing, and helping them see when it does work well for them, when it doesn't? But it's really important for us that they not only use it, but disclose it. We're also bringing lots of leaders to campus to talk with our students about the impact of AI in the corporate world. We've got the president of Microsoft that's visited. You can see we've got a panel from NVIDIA. President of Google joined us, and Brett Wilson, who's a co-founder of Swift Ventures, and has been really helpful in us like framing and understanding what our journey needs to be. But we also want you to know that while we are pushing very hard towards making sure our students are AI fluent and comfortable when they go to job interviews, that they can speak and show what they've done and how they're using AI in the work that they're doing, AI can't do everything. And so we are also pushing equally as hard on helping our students develop what I'm calling here our deeply human skills, that professionalism and communication skills that are now more important than ever in terms of that's what employers are wanting to see. Are our students curious? Are they compassionate? Are they creative? Can they think critically? Do they have strong communication skills? Know that all of our students have 2 required classes in professionalism and communications that they have to take. And in all of our 15 core business courses that all of our majors take, they are graded on their professionalism and communication. They are graded on these 5 things that you see written here. And it's up to 15% of their grade. So we're not just grading attendance, we're grading much more than attendance. It's like, are you showing up and being a strong participant in our classroom? And so the way we see it is kind of this Venn diagram with our AI of fluency being top of mind, strong professionalism and communication skills also being top of mind, and then really weaving in all of our courses an entrepreneurial mindset. And it's not like setting everyone up to start their own business. It's really helping students think more like an entrepreneur, being willing to look at challenges as ones they can overcome, that no problem's too big, that they can, fail and then get back up again and start anew, that they can create and then tweak. And so those are things we're really focused on too. But really, the best proof is in our product, and that's in our students. And so I wanted to take a moment and introduce you to Rachel Lyons. a Kogod superstar. She's an alum and she's actually been back to Kogod to even train our faculty on some of the work that she did, use how she used AI in the private equity space when she was at Carlisle. She's now at Harvard pursuing her MBA. But Rachel, welcome. It's wonderful to have you. And I just have a couple questions for
Yeah,
you if
absolutely.
you're ready.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
it.
okay, so tell us, I love like tell everyone a little more about you. And they're thinking, why choose Kogod? So can you share more about why you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start a little bit with my background. So I am a 2020 graduate from Kogod. I started my career in investment banking in New York, and then I moved over to the Carlyle Group, where I spent 3 years in private credit. As Professor Evans mentioned, I recently decided to go back and pursue my MBA. So I'm currently at Harvard Business School. And while I've been at school, I've actually been working for a startup that I train AI models on how to become more efficient in doing financial modeling. So that has been really cool to be on the other side of it. And then just thinking long term in my career, how I'll be using these resources that I kind of helped train while I was pursuing my MBA. And I think AU and COCOD overall has been just such a special place for me. Maybe as you make your decision, some things that I thought about. First, I just love the AU campus. I think being in DC is such a special place to learn and especially pursue your college years. And at the time I was at school, they're also building and investing in all of these new beautiful advanced STEM buildings. And then COGOD was building out their lab, which basically is these terminals, or we call them Bloomberg terminals. I used them when I was working, and I had a variety of other types of business subscriptions that you'll get to use on the job. So what I really appreciated and noticed when I was touring and making my decision was just how focused the school is on being at the forefront of technology, which today has greatly changed on what they're pursuing. And I think AI is definitely the focus of the future. And I think also, like, on a more personal note, what I've really enjoyed about my time at Kogod is also the community. So I've been out of school now for 6 years. I still regularly keep in touch with my professors, even professors who've retired. And I think that says a lot about the school's ability and desire just to invest in students and alumni.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rachel. I'd love to hear more about, this is a quote from you that AI is
Yeah.
doing what you did as an analyst at 22, as a first year. And, can you talk a little bit more about that and what you mean and what you've seen, just how much you've seen change in the last few years, and then also a little bit about where you think it might be going?
Yeah, so it's been a really exciting time to be in financial services just from we've had a boom post-COVID and then with the rollout of AI. So I had worked for one of the largest mega funds in the world and was on the team that actually rolled out AI in our investment processes. So I think of AI as having capabilities maybe comparable to a first year or second year investment analyst. The programs, even more so, I would say today versus when we initially rolled out the technology a few years ago, are amazing at executing. So think I tell it to compile research, pull sources, look up information, sketch out PowerPoint slides, or even take a first stab at some Excel templates. It has absolutely elevated my work, allowing me to pick up at later stages of my work process and has been enormously helpful in the research process overall. The one thing I've noticed that the current models really lack the ability to make judgment calls. So that's where the human plus AI comes in, although the models are becoming increasingly more sophisticated. I think as people continue to invest in the technology, you see more companies and competitors coming to the space. Like AI is getting better and better, especially those applications. Because first we've had this technology, and then you kind of have to marry between the people developing it and then those who need to use it. So, what are the applications that they can create this for? And then the more that professionals use AI and the more that I was using it at my job, the models start to actually learn what your style is and how the firm overall like approaches investment processes. So that's super interesting, its ability to continue to take on more tasks, almost as you would as you progress through your entry level. I think lastly, where I really see the investment from firms is having AIs be able to do some of the higher level, like Excel modeling, right now, as you think about finance, like the world changes very quickly, and we need to be able to manually change and think about those assumptions and inputs. And the models aren't quite there and making it dynamic for us to do that. So I think as I think about the next 5 to 10 years, that's really what's going to be kind of game changing for us.
Super interesting. Thank you, Rachel. I think what's also top of mind for these folks too, and even like our current students, is just how do you stand out? And so I'd love to get your take, Rachel, on how you stand out with AI automating more tasks, and students are already thinking about like how do I differentiate myself when entering the workforce? Thoughts, tips, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think those who really embrace AI fully and are becoming regular users of the technology are going to be very competitive. So, large institutions generally, not just in financial services, are very slow to adopt change. So, senior folks know of this technology, but they might not know exactly how to use it. So, they really look for entry-level candidates who are using the technology and to help think of new applications to be useful in these roles and then increase efficiency in the team. So I personally went through my summer internship process again, which many of you will soon be doing. And employers are asking in interviews, like, what technology do you use in AI? How do you foresee that being applicable to your role? How will it elevate your skill set? So I do believe like the professionals who are using AI to elevate their skills, think about like maybe using it to take a first stab at a proposal, right? And then adding it after. They're going to become more efficient and more polished than a professional who's not using AI. And the more that you open yourself to applications and adoption, I think the more competitive you'll become.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate it. All right, now I'd like to introduce Luke Bartase. He is a current student, another superstar, a fantastic student in our marketing program, planning to pursue his graduate degree in the fall. So, Luke, welcome. Do you mind also just giving them a little bit of a more thorough introduction of you and everything, all that you're into?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to be here. My name is Luke, as Professor Evans was just saying. And I'm looking forward to being what we call a double eagle. So that's getting both your bachelor's and your master's at AU. But yeah, I'm in a very different sort of space than Rachel really is in the financial sector. I'm a marketing student, and I also currently work in the satellite telecom industry. So you can imagine there's a lot of applications for AI in that sort of space. But I'm really excited to share. If you go to the next slide,
Sure.
I'm really excited to kind of share what we were doing in some of our coursework recently. And Professor Evans had previously mentioned Marketing 411. And this is actually an advertising management course. But quickly, while I was taking this course last semester, we got this project as part of our class with a company called Vion, um, who is a campus clothing company that has an angle on sustainability. It's started by an entrepreneur who's not that much older than I am. She had just graduated university and was sort of trying to build out this company. And one of the crazy things about this project was really understanding, she was managing hundreds of influencers with a team of 4 people. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty difficult task. And a lot of bigger marketing teams manage that many influencers, and they had teams of 50. Um, and so we really saw AI as an opportunity to leverage, a lot of her strengths and this ability to gather people in this ambassador program. And our class was really tasked was how do we solve this issue? So our team, we had students all across the class, and we split into, I think, 6 different groups. Everything from interviewing the ambassadors that are part of the program to talking to Julia, who's the entrepreneur I was mentioning earlier, as well as also figuring out content strategy and then also the AI component. And really our end goal, which became the ambassador tracking program and guide, was really to develop this platform for Julia, again, the entrepreneur, to really be able to manage this. But we definitely didn't start at that point. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so our plans definitely changed a lot. I think this was one of the most eye-opening things about, having a very tangible client-based project in the class was we really had to figure out what the client was really trying to accomplish. Our initial focus, and this was sort of given to us by Julia, was really focused on just building an AI-powered chatbot. So something you might see on like a website when you log on, have like a sales tool that an ambassador could interact with and learn more about the company. But what we quickly realized was that, the core issue wasn't so much the ambassadors on their own weren't able to figure stuff out. It was actually that there wasn't very much communication between, the Vion team and the hundreds of ambassadors that were trying to be a part of this whole system. And so once we recognized that, we realized that AI could be a really powerful tool, to be able to leverage these relationships. But then our problem became, what's the right tool? And so we spanned through like I think four different tools between like Typebot, Claude Code, ChatGPT. We ended up using Replit, which is a web app development platform that's AI powered. It allows you to basically develop web applications and phone applications from just a terminal, like basically a chatbot experience on your web browser, which is pretty powerful. And we were able to do this without writing a single line of code, which for people, especially marketing, I wouldn't say I'm a particularly technical person myself. This is very eye-opening because to be able to have a minimum viable product in front of a real entrepreneur and a real company and see their eyes open at, wait, this works. I can use this. This is functional. AI is really enabling that for students to be able to showcase this.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Luke. And we wanted to make, I guess I didn't show this part yet. Sorry. Did you want
Got
to
a little
speak
bit
to
more.
this?
It's all good.
Okay, you're
Um,
good.
Yeah, and like I think this kind of goes more into just what we delivered to the client wasn't just the chatbot that they were originally requesting, but really having this dual-sided platform. Something that not only served the ambassadors, but also gave Julia and her team more information about what their ambassadors are doing, ways to track and ways to understand, like not just that there's content out there, but like what sort of content is doing really well. And so answering those marketing questions that can typically be pretty difficult to kind of put numbers to and really get ambassadors centered around. We were able to deliver this product in a very short amount of time in a way that Julia could take it and run with it. I remember pretty early on talking with Julia. She had tried to do something similar before. And app development has historically been extremely expensive. I think she was quoted $15,000, $20,000 to develop an app of a similar kind. And our classroom of students was able to do a similar, thing in 3 weeks for about $30. And so, seeing Julia open her eyes and be like, what? Like, just that question of like the possibility was really open to our client. And so that was really powerful. I think we have one more slide.
Great.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that we definitely have to take away for is that AI democratizes development. And really, I think one of the things that Codot is doing really well, especially in this course, in my experience with this, was that it's teaching students that you could solve very real problems very quickly, or at least show a solution in a way that, it could be developed further in the future. And so despite the trial and error being the process, and I think we learned a lot from that experience of really engaging with the kind of ever-changing tool set. The tool we ended up using didn't exist in the capacity that we needed it to for the project when we started the project in September. So in the 5 months that the course was taking place, we were able to be a part of the community that's building these tools and really getting, a better kind of hands-on understanding of how this industry is changing, and how, students and us, we can leverage this in the real world. I was actually able to take a lot of the things we learned from this course into my internship, and showing people on my team, hey, like this is something we can do right now. This idea that we had 3 years ago is now something that we can just do in a 5-minute meeting and it won't be an issue. And taking this idea, if you can think something, if you have the ideational fluency and the compassion and the empathy that, Professor Evans was talking about earlier, AI can help you build it. And I think that's a really powerful place to be as a student. And as much as I think the conversation is around, like entry-level jobs being taken away from AI, I think a really big way that students differentiate themselves is through understanding that your ideas are still at the core of that, and AI is a tool to get you to the point to show it to people and really have that understanding be there. So I really appreciate you giving me the time to talk about this project.
Great job, Luke. Thank you. It's excellent, excellent. We wanted to make sure we had enough time to answer any questions that you might have. Betsy, you're going to help us manage those, right?
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat and we're happy to take a stab at them.
Yeah, we've already got a few.
Okay.
So the first question we have is, do you need any AI skills when you're coming in as a freshman?
No. We will assume that you may be familiar, you've used it, but what we do is we have a partnership with Perplexity. And so while you probably have used ChatGPT, you may have used Perplexity, Copilot, what have you. We do have Perplexity that we give all of our students, faculty, and staff access to their Enterprise Pro version, and that's what we use in Kogod. And so day one, we're opening up Perplexity, making sure you're getting signed on. We do a few activities related to it so you're comfortable, but we don't assume anything coming in.
Great. And this is for Luke and Rachel. Both of you talked about
using AI in your internships and bringing it to other folks on your team, especially in leadership. Can you talk a little bit more about being an AI expert and how you kind of position yourself that way?
Yeah, I'm happy to chat first. So I was working full time when the technology came out, and it was kind of like a murmur across the floor of what its capabilities were. I think what was really interesting about my role is you didn't know how to use it. So we have this technology, right? But we don't know what it's really capable of. So a lot of the time I spent is being like, okay, well, what are some applications that we can use it for? And then trying it and then seeing how we can make it better. But what's really interesting about AI and the machine learning aspect is the first time that you use it is very, very different than the output by the 50th and the 100th time that you use it. So there is a little bit of a learning curve. The machine's learning, you're learning. As it does improve, your work product also improves. So I think a little bit with the senior team is just making sure that that's clear. And then also for you to continue that momentum, that it's an investment on your half too, not just in your skill set, but then also teaching the technology almost as you would be like training an intern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can probably speak a little bit more in the like the earlier end of the career for this because I started my internship process probably I think May 2024. So kind of just as AI was becoming more of an integral part of a lot of businesses, like processes and strategy. I think it's really interesting to come in with, even just a kind of baseline level of knowledge of having experienced it myself and like, again, a real client projects and that sort of area. And I think it's a big thing to be able to say, like when you're at the intern level, that not just that you're comfortable with it, but that you can pitch an idea to your team. Because I work on a smaller team of about 10 people. Being able to be more present in those conversations and say, hey, I know about this tool that can solve the specific problem that we're facing right now, which in the marketing context is something every day, something new has popped up that you're trying to deal with and kind of work around. And speed is often a very big factor in that. I think, and again, I think being comfortable with that process in the real world is something that the Kogod like, I feel has trained me to do very, very well, and it's helped me quite a bit.
Right. Now, this one's for Casey. Can you expand on the requirements to attain a minor in business analytics and AI and talk more about Kogod's AI badges?
Sure. So we have a minor. The minor is a great fit for, students who may want to study outside of Kogod. So maybe they're in our College of Arts and Sciences studying public health or our School of Public Affairs studying politics and government. Tacking on a minor is a really nice way to enhance your skill set. And adding AI to really any discipline right now is a nice enhancement. Those make up, we've got about 18 credits that you'll take as part of the minor. And so our classes are 3 credits each. And so 6 credits. And we do have one where if you're to have a AI class that's maybe in your major discipline, it would double count to both. And so we really are trying to enhance the use of our minor. And then our badges are kind of like lighter versions. So the way the badges work is say I'm an accounting professor, say I'm an accounting major. I don't have the space to really dive into like it also add an AI major or anything like that, but I do want to show that I have an additional skill set beyond just fluency. Um, those students can take it's 2 additional AI specific classes, AI just in their SAGE classes, so those ones that go a little deeper. Um, I think Luke, your class that you just described, Marketing 411, is an example of a SAGE class. And so they're not always super technical, but they are very much relying on AI in terms of how students are learning and thinking and using these tools. And then we have, in addition to the 2 courses, you do a kind of like a outside the classroom activity. So maybe it's a case competition, or you work with our AI Institute on a project related to research or something along those lines. It's based on whatever your interests are, but that's a little more on each. Hopefully that's helpful.
Great. And another one from the chat. What are employers looking for in a graduate when it comes to AI? think that this is a good one for Rachel and Luke.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to this a little bit, both from having been on the interview side and interviewee side. I think the biggest thing is just a very clear understanding and willingness that AI isn't something that, you'll have all these resources and applications, but then choose not to use because that learning curve might be a little bit high at first. I think thinking back at my role and when we were interviewing like new analysts and associates and even VPs for the team, it's how can we use these AI programs, but also what AI programs are out there that maybe they have been using. So being applicable as a student would be what are you using in classes that I don't know? And I loved sitting through Luke's presentation today because I was just wowed by all the applications that he's using that I don't even know. And I jot down some of the names for myself. So I think there's a lot that you can offer as a student. And remember that being as a professional, we're very much in the weeds of what we're doing day to day. And it's not always, you don't always have the opportunity to look elsewhere. So I think that's a huge value add of taking students and interns.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo everything you just said. And I think to kind of jump on that even more, I think having projects and very tangible projects that you've done with AI, and be able to show that. I mean, I work in marketing, so portfolio is probably more of a standard thing there. But next to my photography and my videography, I was able to put this project, and I've talked about with employers and other people, sort of in my career. And just having something very tangible as an output from AI and showing that to potential employers or your boss or whoever's kind of around you, it gives them ideas, and that's kind of your value as an intern is like a new face, a new brain, and a new perspective. And to me, that's something that employers are kind of always searching for at that entry level when people come in.
Great. And then another question from the chat. How did we land on Perplexity and how is that a tool that we chose, and how are we keeping up with new technology?
Yeah, sure. So we took a trip about a year ago out to Silicon Valley to share more about what we were thinking and doing around AI. We met with OpenAI, we met with Google, we met with Perplexity, we met with a few venture capitalists, and Perplexity is a great at the time they were pretty much like a startup, and the reason we went with them is they are really great with their research and minimal hallucinations when it comes to citations. And so the way they dig into that like research space was just a better fit for us and what our faculty wanted to do with our students. It's not, while Perplexity, we wanted to make sure that while we're saying, okay, we're doing a lot in AI, we wanted to make sure there was at least one tool that we could offer our students at the enterprise level that allowed them, access, right? But we have, you can see Luke was a great example. It's not only Perplexity that we're using, it's just kind of our baseline because we wanted to, again, make sure all students have access to something that's not a free version of a tool. And then our faculty are sometimes using Perplexity for one project, but then they're going to ChatGPT for another or a more specific to their discipline AI tool. And so timing was the big reason we worked with Perplexity, and again the way they frame their the model frames like their references and their citations and stuff. And they've been a great partner to work with too, so that's helped. But we actually just did another trip to Silicon Valley, touch base with those same folks, OpenAI, Google, Perplexity. And we're partnering with Google on some work around learning outcomes because we're doing all of this great thing in our classes, but we need to be able to measure that it's working. And so, we're working with them on that. And so constantly checking in with these folks or how we're staying up to date. And it's been great to hear those affirmations that we're on a good track and still way ahead of a lot of everyone else.
Awesome. Then one more from the chat about being in DC. Why did coming to school in DC make a difference? Not necessarily AI, but just being in DC in general.
I'll give that to Luke and Rachel.
Yeah, I can speak about kind of my experience while I was there. I think one thing is just you have such a wealth of like history and knowledge across other universities and just general resources in DC. So going to the museums is always a big fan of students. And I know I would always take my family there when they visited. And I think it's just like it's a beautiful historic area that really allows you to think about things, leverage resources in the community. One of my projects that I actually did, I think it was part of some of my like prereq work, but I actually had to go to a Smithsonian and I did a project there live instead of going to class. So I think AU just does a great job of utilizing the resources that are around you and getting out to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think funny story for my situation. I'm actually from the DC metro area. I'm from Northern Virginia originally. So coming to AU was not a super far hop, but even with that, it's been pretty amazing, living in and around DC and being a student in DC. Just as Rachel was saying, see all the different sort of disciplines and types of people that you meet. I think DC kind of gets associated with the government a lot, just definitely a major part of the city. But there's so many opportunities to get involved in arts and culture and entrepreneurship and all these like different layers of DC that don't get talked about as much. And AU really gives you the opportunity to engage with that in your classes and your student clubs, and sort of every facet of your life. And I've done everything from making music videos for local artists to going to local or like conferences are happening in the area. DC is just such a unique community to be a student in, and I think those resources really are extremely valuable as a student.
I'll just add it's a great city for business too. Every major company has a strong presence here that translates into amazing internship opportunities for our students, which is also a big plus.
Great. And we're coming up to time. So I think we'll leave it with one question. So all of these folks are kind of deciding on college right now. So if you had one piece of advice to give them, what would it be? And Rachel, we'll start with you.
For me, I think about what's valuable to you. So for me, I really wanted to have a major in finance, and I think AU does that the best. And some of the resources that it has in business school and AI. And then I know it's kind of hard to do this when you're so young, but just think about, what's going to be important in 4 years and 5 years and 6 years. And I do think like the emphasis on AI and just the way that Kogod and AU overall has positioned themselves to kind of give you guys those resources and that upper hand against some of your competition is extremely invaluable and has really, helped me stay connected to the community. And I love hearing all the amazing things that they're doing and stuff like Luke shared with you guys today.
Yeah, I definitely, again, I echo a lot of what Rachel just said. I think a big thing is kind of knowing what you're looking to get out of your college experience is a really big factor. I think a lot of different schools kind of offer a lot of different things in that realm. But for me, like choosing AU and being a student here and obviously going on to do my master's and all that, has really been centered around the fact that I can do a lot of different things at once. And as a business student, being multidisciplinary is extremely valuable. I think if you're looking for a school to choose, AU really is a great place if you're looking to kind of get your hands into things like, both doing AI and art and business and music, like all those sort of different combinations. For me, that became really important. So if you're in a similar position where you can't really choose, I think that's something to keep an eye out for.
And I'll just add, I encourage you to find a place where you're going to really be more than just a warm body in a classroom. You're not going to sit in a lecture hall in Kogak classes with hundreds of other students. We have small classes. You're going to get to know your faculty very well. Your faculty will be the ones teaching you, not your TAs. We have TAs, but they're more for support. Again, our classes are small. We cap them at 35. They average closer to 25, 26. And so you will get to know your faculty, you will get to know each other. The way our curriculum is organized now, it's more of a cohort in your first and second year. So you're going to meet a lot of friends, you're going to get to know a lot of people, but that faculty access is really unique. And I think both Luke and Rachel will just think of faculty that have had a big influence on them, and Rachel is still in touch with us because that is a relationship you will continue, and you will have people that will continue to support you way beyond your time just in their class, including your time in Kogod, including your time when you decide what you want to do for your career. And so I think like that's a really important piece that we offer that not everyone else can.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to time. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you have any further questions, you can always reach out. The undergraduate enrollment team is here to help, and so are we at Kogod. So let us know if you have any more questions. And thank you so much for joining, and thank you to our panelists tonight.